Okay, hello everyone. We're just waiting for a couple more people to come in, but I'll get underway. So, welcome to this edition of the Lightbulb Sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Awards, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb Sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds, designed to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at bt.com/skills for tomorrow, or by clicking the link in the comments section of the webinar platform. So today's session, I'll be speaking with one of the world's leading mobile marketers, James Oakley. We're going to be looking mainly at Google Ads and identifying how much small businesses should be spending, some tips and advice on budgeting, keywords, and reaching your goals much more effectively. We are going to have an opportunity for a Q&A session at the end. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask James, then we'll do our best to put these to him at the end of the session. So James, we'll start off. Let's have a brief overview of Google Ads and how they work.
Okay, no worries. Hi everybody, and by the way, the Lightbulb sessions are genuinely really useful. Not to plug you guys too much, but as in Influencers last week was great, so I would recommend people go back as well and watch some other webinars for additional learning. On Google Ads, essentially what I would say is it's an immediate path to potential new customers if we put it down into one line. And it's very much like renting your dream house while effectively you're able to pay for it. It's also really good from a small business perspective to quickly work out whether your product or service is scalable on that platform. So it's not like you have to wait weeks and weeks for the results. Depending on your spend, it might be literally a couple of days. It could be, up to 2 weeks, but you will know very quickly how it's working. It's effectively Google's tool for being a non-interruption style of marketing, which is actually quite rare. So as in you'll be scrolling through your Facebook feed and right now you're going to see loads of Black Friday adverts. Google is different because people are actually typing in their question or what they need as a solution, and you're answering it with your ad. That's the major difference and why it is so good for, say, small businesses and large as well.
Okay, excellent. And so in terms of budget and strategy, where's a good kind of starting point for small businesses?
Yeah, so I always say, actually, you're going to laugh, I say don't have an exact budget. The reason is because if you have a particular budget and you're getting good results, why would you want to put a cap on it? But obviously it is flexible enough that, of course, if it's not working for you or you want to wait until you've got expert help or bring someone into your team, then of course you can actually pause ads and not spend any money as well. For a small business, it depends on your product and service. So obviously, if you're selling something for £50 or for £2,000 or your average customer value, that will mean that you probably spend a different amount of time waiting to see if what you're doing is working on Google Ads. So I'd say very much base it on your average customer value over, say, 3 to 6 months, because that's bearing in mind cash flow. And obviously, providing you can come out profitable or even break even, if you're going to have customers who are still with you buying 6 months later, that obviously gives you enough cash flow to get through, and then you'll be actually much more profitable because you won't have to pay to acquire that customer again. So as small as you want, but give yourself enough of a chance to actually get your customers, i.e. if your service is £2,000, don't be disappointed if you don't get a new client after £250 worth of spend.
Okay, so is it kind of an almost set your initial spend and effectively see how it goes as to whether you need to keep that going or increase it?
Yeah, and of course there's 3 ways you can do it. You can run it yourself and obviously watch sessions like this, do your reading before you do, because otherwise you can't say it doesn't work for your business if you haven't done it properly. So you've got to actually have a real crack at the whip to know if it's going to work for your business, because once you get it running, it could be a huge source of new customers for you. The other way, of course, is to have somebody in your team do it, or to effectively get somebody in to run this for you. And again, like before I did what I'm doing now, I previously ran a travel company, and we built our PPC up from the ground up and actually learned. And it's a case of actually putting that into practice, following best practice, and obviously knowing your customers as well, because as much as Google might recommend certain things, as an example, this was 10 years ago, but 80% of our customers were on a mobile then. That's about the case now. So we very much have mobile wording, separate mobile ads and Google ads. It's just knowing effectively the best practice based on your customers and industry. But it is a case of very much seeing how it goes and being flexible enough to adapt, and also willing enough to either learn or get somebody in who does, as I say, because what the worst thing you can do is say Google Ads doesn't work for me, and that's because you've used, Google Ads very simple tools rather than say the more complex ones where you can actually really scale up your business.
Yeah, you mentioned just before about not being too disappointed if you don't see results straight away. Is there a kind of particular timeline that you'd expect to see with certain campaigns or certain strategies or certain budgets?
Yeah, so as in when I say that, that's very much in relation to spend, but providing you're spending enough to know, you'll know, as I say, within 2 weeks if your initial ads are working well enough. And that's because Google has metrics of how many people are actually clicking through based on viewing your ads. As an example, if you run a tractor company, let's use that as a basic example, I'm sure many of you do, then basically I would be looking at how many people are clicking on my ad per 100 people who see that. And then actually, if it's a case of I need to reword it because I've been putting we sell red tractors, but actually people are looking for black, we can change that and then monitor the click-through rate. So again, it's very much monitoring the data, and then of course having the tracking set up on your website, which is absolutely essential, so that you know how many inquiries or even phone calls, always ask on the phone if you take calls, how they're finding you, because the key you want to do is work out how many people per 100 that you pay for will get in touch and become a potential customer inquiry or actually buy from your website if you're on e-commerce.
Okay, so it sounds like that's the most important metric, the number per 100 users or 1,000 users or whatever, rather than exactly how many are coming through.
Yeah, because that's how you can scale the business. So again, if say it's 1 in 100 buy from you and your product's £1,000 and it costs you £500 for those visitors, then before cost you are in profit, and that's how you can obviously scale. And then obviously you just minus whatever your product or service costs are. So it's very much about learning, can we scale this? And that's why at the start I mentioned, even if you're breaking even, but people will be buying from you still in 6 months' time, then that's okay, because actually in 6 months' time you'll become very profitable from those same customers.
Yeah, apologies if you just heard my dog there barking in the background, the joys of working from home. Obviously, for a lot of small businesses, particularly startups, cash flow is particularly tight, especially around everything that's going on now. Do you see Google Ads as an avenue that is absolutely essential to sustain your business, let alone grow your business? Or is it kind of something that you need to kind of organically grow for a little bit and then start to pursue it?
Yeah, so that's your choice based on cash flow. So like you said, you could be particularly tight and not have 6 months to wait, and therefore of course you might need to base it on a 1 month return. What I would say is, as you grow, it will become most likely an essential part of what you do. But there are, of course, other ways to grow. So as an example, we work with an amazing yoga company. Are we able to mention them
Sure, go for it.
called Yogi Bear, and they grew very much straight out of Instagram, and now actually they have, of course, a full digital presence and seamless digital marketing channels, which include Google Ads as a core part of what they do. But they very much grew from social initially. And so, of course, there are other ways to do it. It's just that Google Ads will become important. The major thing, I guess, I would note from that is, if, say, Instagram's not your thing, or you're not finding the success on socials or via other avenues, Google Ads is the quickest way you can test out the demand for your product. Because again, if say it's luxury, if you're a luxury hotel, as an example, or a boutique hotel in Brighton, when people are typing in Brighton hotels or boutique hotels in Brighton, once you know that, let's say 5 out of 100 people actually are contacting you for every 100, you know there's a demand, and it's a case of obviously you can then work off that. Whereas if nobody's contacting you, you either need to change your website landing page or your sales technique if it's over the phone, but it very much can give you an answer quickly. So what I would say is, lots of people say, oh, I'm going to invest my time into SEO or Google search engine optimization, which is appearing in the free rankings. But that can take months, and you can potentially pay someone a lot of time and money to do that, or spend a lot of your time. Whereas what you might want to do is just go and test, even if it's say 500 clicks from people for that dream search term which you'd want to appear for. And then you're going to know if actually you've got demand for your product or service. So that can give you an answer much faster than, say, waiting 6 months, finally getting those rankings, and then obviously being disappointed because people aren't purchasing from you. So it gives you a chance to fix your business, either your product or actually your sales and landing pages, very, very quickly, as opposed to waiting. And that's obviously a massive advantage when you are small, because it can save you thousands of pounds.
And you mentioned about the search terms that you want to be found for. If you're a small business that you're quite new to this kind of space, how do you even begin to know what kind of keywords that you should be using?
Yeah, so it completely depends on obviously what type of a business you are. But if you're an e-commerce based business, again, let's go back to the tractor example. What we don't want to do is just effectively appear for people who are searching red tractor in Google, because they actually probably not looking to buy a red tractor. But if, say, you have on your search terms something very, very specific, as an example, buy red tractor supplier, that obviously cuts away all of the waste in terms of people who wouldn't actually be wanting to buy your product. So it's about being taking what you would imagine would be your sort of dream set of keywords, and obviously putting fences around any chance to waste money. And that way you're slimmed down to exactly what you want people to do on your website. So effectively buy, or it might be, say, as an example, digital marketing agency, PPC digital marketing agency, because then if you're an agency and you only do search engine optimization, obviously you don't want to appear. So you'd want to be very specific about what you do. And also there's something called negative keywords, and I just note that down if you are thinking of doing PPC. PPC, by the way, is Google AdWords pay per click. I'm just using some jargon, so my apologies. But do look at negative keywords, because that will actually stop you spending money if somebody types in something. So again, on the tractor, if you've only got, say, red tractors, somebody types in blue tractor, you would not want to appear for that. So you use blue as the negative keyword. So therefore, if somebody's got that in their search term, you don't appear. So it's effectively, think of your ideal search term. What do you want people to do, i.e. buy? And what do you not want people to do, i.e. look for the wrong product? And that way you can build out an initial campaign, which is probably going to be fairly accurate. And again, the reason I said at the start, make sure you have those best practices, is because then if you do that, if you get great results, fantastic. But if you don't, you know you've done it properly. Whereas if, say, you didn't get great results, but you had no negative keywords or no specific keyword planning, you could get a false sense of how good Google AdWords is for your business, and then potentially miss out on revenue going forwards.
And obviously we just touched on targeting the actual keyword itself there. But how detailed can you get in terms of who you target?
So the answer is very, 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 and we could run a whole seminar on it. But in short, depending on what level your business is at, you can get very detailed. As an example, you could say target only people who have recently expressed an interest on Google in purchasing homeware or home furniture. You could target, if you're a travel agency, only people who have recently looked at booking hotels. So you can go more granular in that sense. You can also go, if you're a slightly larger business, more granular in terms of your customers, and also your website visitors. So you could target so that the only people who saw your search ads were people who had previously been on your website, even if they have clicked off and not purchased anything. So you might want to say, I know they're more likely to buy because they already know my business or brand. Therefore, I only want to appear for them. And that way I spend my money as tightly as I can because I don't have a large budget. And I know that if this is going to work, these are the best people to do it with. The other way is actually a lookalike audience, which is similar to Facebook lookalike audiences if you know it. And that's where you can actually target people who are similar, say, to your best customers or buyers. But again, you need to have a certain level of data in your business, i.e. on sales, to be able to do that. So as a sort of more immediate, if you're a small business, actually having something which is interest-based targeting or based on their behavior is better. This goes for all paid marketing platforms, but you can also go even more granular, such as male, female demographic. So again, it might be that my core buyer is females aged 35 to 50. With that in mind, if I'm just starting out on a small budget, I only want to target females who are aged 35 to 50 because it's going to give me the best chance to know if I can scale my business quickly through Google PPC. And of course, once you do that, if you get that working, you can target 35 to 60 or 25 to 50. But you obviously want to give yourself the very best shot, especially if you're on, let's say, not huge long-term cash flow. And again, like you need to have those customers coming in quickly. You'd start where the most likely customers are. Same with locations as well, by the way. Of course, if you're a local business, you might say only within 10 miles of Manchester or 10 miles of Brighton or Glasgow.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we've discussed kind of looking at what you as a small business want to get out there. Is it possible to target your competitors with Google Ads and PPC?
Yes, and it's quite possible they will target you as well. So again, as an example, with travel, you will get people who are bidding on your brand name. So if you're, X travel, people will type in X travel, and you'd get a competitor bidding. Two ways you can deal with it. You can either agree not to bid on each other's keywords, which would be too cordial probably, or you can actually obviously bid on their name as well. But the key is there's no point in bidding if you're not getting the return. So again, you have to have that tracking in place. Google does have one thing which is an advantage for your own brand, which is where if a competitor wants to bid on your brand name or vice versa, they'd have to pay more than you would because Google knows it's your brand. So again, you have to prove the return is there to justify keeping doing that. And also, if your competitor, say, is far larger, I'd actually be much more inclined to be cleverer about what you're doing than trying to match them, say, spend for spend on your name, because you just end up wasting your money. So you might go with very specific search terms, look at niches, and it might be their niche. But again, because Google doesn't know it's their brand, you actually end up paying less than you would if you bid on their brand name.
And is it something that you'd recommend targeting a competitor?
I would if the value justifies it. But what I would say is I'd target the competitors' keywords first. So depending on, again, like the size of your business, if you're using an outside team, if you're using a team member yourself, an agency, as an example, if I want to know what Google Ads a company's running, I have a program that me and the team can go and look at and effectively have a list. And so you would effectively be able to go and see what keywords you should look at bidding on. If you don't have that resource available, then I'd be typing in what you imagine to be their keywords and seeing if they are coming up on the paid ad section. And then obviously you'll want to go and compete with them. The good news is, however big they are, you can compete with them because Google ranks it effectively has a quality score, and that's a combination of the amount you bid versus the quality of your ad. So if Google deems your ad copy and your landing page to be more relevant than your competitors, and this is where you can be more clever, then you can actually pay less but still appear above your competitors in the rankings. And that's obviously key because the more times you're top, the more people are going to click on you. And obviously if you can bring that cost down, that's ideal because you're paying less. You can send 50% more people to your website for the same cost. And actually just on that, this might come up later, but that's where having things like, even now, mobile specific ads and ad copy and landing pages versus desktop landing pages and ad copy can really help you, because that can massively up your click-through rate, and actually then that brings down your cost because Google knows it's more relevant. It's all about doing what Google wants effectively, and Google wants you to be the solution for your customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, that was going to be my next question about splitting between mobile and desktop. How similar do you find that campaigns tend to be between a mobile and desktop? And is there kind of a playbook for splitting them?
Yeah. So this is again a complete generalization, but more people now are on mobile than a desktop. And the likelihood is, unless you're in B2B, you probably have 60 to 80% of your visitors on a mobile. So in that, again, when you're looking to scale quickly, there's more people on a mobile to effectively go for. However, if you're looking, again, you're a small business and you need every ounce of return you can get, actually go into your Google Analytics, if you've got e-commerce at the moment, look at your conversion rates by mobile and desktop, and then prioritize based on the results from that, because everything about what I do, what you want to do, is based on data, as in it should be evidence-based, not opinion-based, because then it's directly true and you see the results. So if your conversion rate is double on desktop, it doesn't matter that there's 3 times as many people on mobile, because there'll still be, on your small budget, you're never going to exhaust everybody who's searching on a desktop. So again, it's like with, say, your best demographics, you want to be focusing on your best platforms. But actually that could mean that it's iPhones. iPhone users, as an example, are notorious for having a higher conversion rate than Android. It's catching up now and actually getting quite even, but that was like hugely the case 3 or 4 years ago. Because of things like the App Store, it very much trained you to be ready to buy on your phone. So again, it's looking at that data and finding out what works for your business. Or, as I say, having a team member do it and coming back to you and saying, here's the situation, this is what we know, this is what we're going to do about it and why, and this is the results we can now expect.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about the time that you should be starting to see results and things like that. In terms of monitoring and assessing your campaign, how often should you be looking at its performance and starting to think about making changes and things like that? Is it? I imagine it would drive anyone crazy to be kind of hit and refresh daily, that kind of thing.
What I can tell you is when you get like huge momentum, you will be checking it multiple times daily. As in, if you can scale it up and you see something's working, and let's say you were spending £100 a week and now you're spending 3,000, you will be checking that multiple times. You won't be able to help it because it's so exciting when you get on that momentum and the roll. As for like general, what I call effectively maintenance, you'd be wanting to look fairly regularly at the start, again, especially if you're on a relatively small budget, to see based on click-through rate, because even if, say, you don't have tens or hundreds of purchases coming through, you might see that actually you're getting hundreds of impressions each day, and that's obviously something which you can make an immediate change on. So if you're getting no one's clicking through but lots of people are seeing your ad, you change the ad copy. What I would say is, like, again, if you want sort of a direct note to write down, I'd look at around 1,000 impressions will give you an idea as to what your click-through rates are on your ads, and therefore you can have an accurate idea of what you need to do. And don't be disappointed, by the way, if it's not 15%, that's okay. But what you might do is test the exact same ad and landing page, but have different headlines, and one might have 10% and one might have 5%. And they are that different sometimes as well. So then after 1,000 impressions, you'd be able to know actually which is coming through as like you can run. And once you pick the one that's working better, that reduces your cost for all of your ads. And again, what I would say is you then do that again and again and again, and that's part of like the maintenance process. But once you're spending those higher amounts, and obviously it might be actually every 50 purchases instead of every impressions, because then that starts to actually be the most important thing for your business at that stage in your ads account.
Okay, so it sounds like the way that you're monitoring it and the way that you're assessing it will actually kind of change as the campaign progresses, as the success of it progresses, and what you're getting from it, really.
Yeah, and as a small business, what I would say don't do is just go and set up your ads and close your eyes and go away for a week and think, I'll see what happens. And if somebody does call, I'll just do my usual telephone conversation. You've got to actually ask where it's from. You've got to be monitoring in those initial days, because obviously every pound is vital at your early stages. So you need to, as I say, make sure that you're not wasting any. So again, by monitoring, it might be that one day you measure the negative keywords to make sure that you're not getting search terms which you don't want. There's, again, Google's so deep that you could do it every day anyway, but I'd say like certainly at the start you want to be just making sure there's no waste.
Yeah, and something you said right at the start was about businesses not seeing results, and kind of that, usually that's because they're using it in quite a simplistic way. Obviously, this is what you do as a profession, as a business. How many small businesses do you see that kind of throw their hands up and say, Google Ads is awful, I tried it, didn't work, and that's it? They don't come back to it. They don't try and learn from that.
Yeah. What I would say is possibly more common in small growing businesses who have grown to a certain stage is saying, we run Google Ads and we're scared to turn it off, but we don't know if it's working, which is exactly the same, as in we see you're effectively not knowing what's going on. It's a high percentage where, say, it's a small company, because naturally, and I was in this position as well, as I say, with the travel company, because we grew that from scratch, where you've got to do 50 million things, and spending hours of research on Google Ads is probably not going to be something you've got time for if you've got your 50 million things to do. So it's really a case of, effectively, again, like, you want to be able to give yourself a good enough shot that it's realistic. But I understand that when you're that small, you have to effectively, it's either one of your team or it's you doing it. And I made a very early decision that I would learn it. And obviously that's how, post the travel company sale, that I actually came on and started a digital marketing agency. But what I would also say is it's not always the answer to have somebody outside, as in the business, say an agency, doing it. You have to get an agency that's ROI focused, which was one of my disappointments when our travel company grew and we worked with digital agencies, that actually the ROI focus wasn't there. So I would say whoever's doing it, you've got to have that ROI focus, because that is the be all and end all when you're a small, hopefully growing business. Like now, where obviously I was literally looking today, and it was under 1% of companies have doubled their turnover since the pandemic, but actually over 20% have actually halved their turnover effectively. So we're in, like, obviously everyone, all of us are in a really tough position right now, and it's obviously about what can you do and how can you get the most value from what you're doing, and that does actually make Google Ads at this point slightly cheaper to use than, say, it was last year. But again, you've got to realize, depending on what type of business you're running, is that right for you right now? So again, like, have a proper audit, see where your words come from. What I should have said actually on the keywords as well is you should be using Google. It was called Webmaster Tools. They've updated it. But now effectively you can see where people are finding your website from. And if you can see where people are finding your website, and also more importantly, what pages people are landing on to buy, that should give you your initial ad set of keywords in Google Ads. If people are landing on your, let's say, leather brown bag, Brighton, as in if that was your keyword, then obviously that's the kind of keyword you could immediately look at, providing it's getting you a good conversion rate to actually begin bidding on. So again, it's if you're small and growing, it's about building out your keywords slowly, and just, as I say, focusing on that ROI, whoever's doing it, whether that's you or somebody else or one of your team.
Yeah,
but don't feel bad if you don't know the ins and outs, because it's genuinely common and it's normal, because at the end of the day, you shouldn't be expected to be an expert. It's not like your fault, as in it's the fact that it takes days, weeks to master, and obviously days, weeks to actually refine what you're doing and learn what works. Because even everything we do, it's not like I come in and I know everything. And what I can say is, based on previous evidence, this should work, and then we have to learn with this account how actually that applies to us. So we can get the head start, but you still have to actually know how that's performing for your business, because of course every business is different.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the impact of the pandemic, actually, because I thought it was an interesting one where obviously so many businesses have taken a huge hit over the past, what, 7, 8 months now, which would think that people are reducing their spend on Google Ads, but at the same time, more people are at home. More people, particularly in the early months, are on furlough, spending more time on their phone, browsing, shopping, and that might have kind of seen an increase. So, what is the situation kind of being?
Yeah, so we, in terms of like our three primary areas of specialism, was we actually work with wellness and active based companies, sustainable companies, and then also we had travel as well. So obviously, as an example, the travel companies we worked with, and also anybody with a retail premises. So we worked with like a lovely art studio in London, things like that. They had to close, and you can't spend when you're not open or not allowed to book your flights, as an example. So the spend there literally drops off a cliff. With, say, our clients in the wellness and active space who didn't have a premises, let's, as an example, yoga company, homewares company, skincare company, that demand went through the roof, and that actually meant that their cost on Google Ads became higher, but the conversion rate was also massively higher because people, as an example, if you were B&Q, their conversion rate, I have no doubt, would have gone through the roof. And that's because people were actually more likely to buy and more ready to buy because they were doing things to their house or their garden, whatever that might be. So again, it's very much about the sector you're in. But obviously, as I say, I literally had it on my phone earlier, and I'll just find it. Just again, because depending on what situation you're in, this might make you feel better, or at least not bad. But it's less than 1%, as I say, of that 50% plus turnover, and then decrease between, basically a decrease below 50. What they've been doing previously was, it's around 60% of businesses have seen a fall, about 25% have stayed the same, and then effectively the other 15% have grown their businesses. So again, you're not unique if you've struggled, as in it's not say your fault, but what I would say is once you're in a position to be able to start using Google Ads, then it's the best way to find an immediate ROI and return on your spend, and maybe to build up your customer base again, depending on obviously what's happened with that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In terms of the kind of creative aspect of Google Ads, once you get all, you've got all your keywords, you know exactly what you're targeting, you know exactly who you're targeting. How important does the kind of creative aspect of the ad itself kind of sit on the scale of that?
Yeah. Creative, often when you say creatives, I might think of, say, like images and things like that. So it's slightly less important at this point in Google Ads, although they are bringing out gallery-based images more and more in terms of for ads. But often the creative is, in our world, it's the headline, as in, because you need people to come and click through. The creative part in terms of, say, making sure that you're converting those customers comes when they land on your website. So again, like that's where you need to be, again, monitoring not only your click-through rate, but your conversion rate. Because if you could double your conversion rate, you could pay double the price for the same number of clicks and it would still be okay. So it's very much in terms of, as an example, I'm not a massively creative person, I'm a data-led person. And so therefore, I, again, monitor the data and make changes based on that. And that for me is like my creative part. But let's say maybe on other ad platforms, having, say, a creative designer on team, or if you're creative yourself, that will probably benefit you more than it would, say, on Google Ads. But no doubt being creative in terms of, and I wish I could share my screen actually, in terms of your copy. Again, just as an example, this is again years ago, but when not many people were doing separate mobile ads, we actually had an ad which went out and said download on your mobile, as opposed to just a standard download. And that was in our ad copy. And we ran a test exactly the same. It was an events calendar and one said download on your mobile and one said download now. And it was half the cost for us to run download on your mobile. And that at the time was because people were sick of bad mobile websites. We'd obviously, again, got on early. And there's no doubt for your business, especially if you're small, you're so agile, so quick and flexible compared to a large company. You can do things like that and find things that you can offer that nobody else can, or just change things in a way that might take a large company 2 weeks to do. You can do it in a day or an afternoon. That's like a massive advantage for like all of us as small businesses in the grand scheme, and we should use that as much as we can, because that's like as much as anything important.
Yeah, so it sounds as though it's kind of one doesn't work with the other. You know, a fantastic creative ad doesn't work without good Google ad strategy, and likewise good Google ad strategy doesn't work without brilliant creative, kind of thing.
Yeah, you're completely right. And again, if you took that one step further, it doesn't work if you've got a terrible website. But again, in that sense, because you need to convert them once they've gone on there. Otherwise, you could bring everybody, but if you're not able to convert them, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. So you need to have both halves to sort of make it, again, like worthwhile. Again, if you said to me, I've got a terrible website, but it's a great idea for Google Ads, I'd say spend the money on sorting out the website first, then go with Google Ads, because your ROI will be significantly higher. And again, just a point of note on that, there's obviously lots of web designers, and loads of them are great and amazing designers. What I would be looking for, if say you're looking to effectively redo your website or make it more conversion optimized, is somebody who is a web optimizer, as in a developer focused on your ROI, not just the look of it, because you can have amazingly beautiful things, but if you don't have a solid, real call to action, and say a good checkout process on ecom, you're going to struggle whatever you do. And I can tell you now, if you are on ecom, you want people to be able to buy within 3 clicks of landing on your website. And if that's not happening, you really want to make that happen, because you're going to see the results from that like immediately.
Yeah. Okay. We've had quite a few questions come in, so I think it'd be a good time to move on to those.
Yeah.
So Sonia asks if Google Ads is mostly beneficial for product or service-based businesses.
In terms of which one would I prefer it for if I had to pick?
I guess.
It can be completely both. I wouldn't say as a benefit. It's obviously on service-based. Normally your your fees are higher than say what you might sell a product for, depending on your product business. So again, with services, we worked with a language training company, and their average value once they got a contract was thousands of pounds. So they could spend and wait for that time for the right inquiries to come through. Whereas on a product basis, you might be selling your product for £10, could be £100, it could be 200. It's unlikely to be thousands. So you just have to get those results obviously that much quicker, and you can get results quicker. So you'll find an answer probably within 1 week if you're a product company, as to if you're able to run your Google Ads at a profitable in a profitable way. So in that sense, it will work for both. It's just that you have slightly different timeframes based on how much your average customer value is.
Okay, and another question, I'm going to apologize because I'm fairly certain that I'm about to absolutely butcher their name. Gonzague, I hope I've got that some way correct. So he runs a B2B consulting business and asks if both Google and LinkedIn should be considered, or is one platform better than the other to promote services successfully?
Yeah. So like I said at the start, if you know what people want and are typing into Google, you almost can't beat Google except for Amazon, because that's the other place that does it. As in, if people are searching for your service, people don't type in on LinkedIn in a search query. So as a start, Google is that one for those core search queries. You can't beat it in that sense. LinkedIn, however, is really good. What I would say is it's significantly more expensive. And so again, depending on what your service is, you need to have a bit more of a run in terms of cash flow, but also probably a slightly higher priced product or a recurring fee product service that you're selling. But in terms of of the question you've asked, I would say what you could do is, depending on what area you consult in, I'd be creating some kind of a video guide. In the ideal video, you might not be able to do that, otherwise PDF, that actually when somebody types in exactly what you're wanting, that you've really niched. So as an example, if it was yoga retreat consulting business, you would be wanting to have the guide or the Bible or the A to Z of how to grow your yoga retreat that somebody can download on to watch on video or on PDF. Because again, the more personalized, and this is e-com or B2B or services, the more personalized you are, the higher conversion rate you will get every single time. And it's the same as if you wanted to work with me and you've got a very specific business and that's exactly what I do, you're going to trust me more than if, say, I'm generic. And it's the same as with customers. So business consulting, or say if you've got a skincare product, if I've got dry skin, I'm probably going to buy the product, which when I click I have dry skin, comes up as this will solve your issue. So again, it's very much about being personalized in what you do. And again, the more personalized you are, higher click-through rate means less cost for Google. As much as I've said it's less cost than LinkedIn, by the way, depending on the search term, it can range from anything from 20p to £20 a click. But don't get scared, it's not often £20.
Okay. Another question, you mentioned price in there, which maybe jumped to this one. Is another question that says some agencies propose a package of around £400 a month to manage a 1,000 monthly spend. Is that a good approach, or is it better to manage the ads in-house and you effectively end up with a £1,400 budget?
Yeah. I'd say if you don't know what you're doing as such, or you're not confident that you are, let's say, at the very least, you cannot perform well or at a good level, 8 out of 10 level, then no, because if you waste 1,400, that's worse than spending 1,000 and obviously then actually getting results from it. What I would say is, and that is relatively common, and then often it will go to a percentage of your spend in terms of the fee that people charge you. That's actually not bad in your mind, as in there, and it's a good way to work. The reason being, and actually that's the way we work, is because you're incentivizing the person or the team you're working with to do better. So effectively, it's in their interest to get you results, because if you are getting results, you'll spend more money, and therefore they effectively take a higher result overall, even though it's the same percentage. So that I would say. What you might want to do is, obviously, if you don't have the time to know it yourself, but you're thinking somebody in your team, again, put them on a proper course. You'd have to spend money in terms of on doing that, but I'd highly advise it. And then obviously invest in them and their ongoing training. And it might be that actually you're saying, right, we're not going to get an agency in because we have a 12-month run. We know we have £2,000 a month to spend, as an example. But get somebody in, an expert or an agency, just to work with your team for a day or something like that, because obviously that gives them skills they can apply on an ongoing basis. And also, don't be afraid to ask the odd question. I can tell you now, as in that we have people who we've almost worked with, haven't ended up, and they've chucked us the odd question. People should be more than happy to do that. It's like the human thing to do, and the worst somebody's going to say is no, I'm not answering. So if you've got like one specific question, like you should ask.
Okay, great. We've got time for a couple more. A question from Alex, who asks, when using Google's keyword analysis tool, what are the most important stats to be looking out for when creating your adverts?
In terms of creating your adverts, one is obviously search volume, because if there's nobody searching for your keyword, then you're going to be trying to spend money and literally not able to. And one, of course, is also the cost. So as an example, if you're thinking, oh, I've got a £200 budget, probably get 200 clicks, and you see your keyword is £20 a click. Again, unlikely to be the case, but in the odd situation might be. And obviously that changes everything that you're thinking about. In the same way as if you sell a £2.99 product and it's going to cost you £1.50 to get clicked on with your ad, it's probably best not to do it, unless that's a recurring £2.99 every week. So again, it's being personal to what you are doing, and obviously looking out for the core basics. The one other thing, which I don't actually know if it's included on there, but will be the number of other people bidding on your keywords. Again, that's firstly because it will be slightly more expensive if people are doing it well. And then secondly, also to know if you're, as I say, there's no point you don't steal people, but as in have a look and see what other people are doing, definitely, and see how you can improve on that. So again, it might give you a good place to start if you know, because if you've got somebody who say you've seen them grow hugely over the last year and you know they're all over Google AdWords, it's a good chance they're getting a high return from Google AdWords. So why not hop on and see if you can do the same? But again, what you almost want to do is look at everything they're doing. How can we do it better? So have a look at their ad. What could I word that? How could I word that differently if it's more personal to my customer? Look at their landing page. How could I be quicker with getting them to buy or inquire or pick up the phone? And actually just one tip on that is all of you on your mobile sites in the ideal world, especially if it's a service-based business, should have a click to call bar that's on the bottom of your website if somebody's on a phone, because then they can literally click it and it comes straight through and rings your number. That I would say is a major thing, because people are always complaining about mobile rates of conversion being lower. Well, let's give them what they actually want. They're on a phone. They can click one button and call us. So, again, it's about being and realizing what people want and, therefore.
Okay, great. And we've probably got time for one more. So this question is from Donna, who has an e-commerce business, and she's asking if it's better to run ads on Google Shopping platform or on the usual Google search function. Is it better to do both?
Yeah. What I would say is, in the ideal world, you probably don't want to be using both, say, at the same time, but you should definitely test both individually. Often with Google Shopping, so again, it's more obvious on a desktop because you literally have the line of competitors, and that can be really hard if you're a brand. So you sell a niche product or something like that, and you suddenly see all of your retailers are actually selling your product. At the end of the day, there's nothing you can do. So try it and see if that works for you. But in terms of as a generic, if you bid on your brand, even if people are selling, say, your product, actually you will be top for the Google ad listing. So that's probably where you want to start if you're directly just a small brand, but you have retailers who are going to be bidding. But Google Shopping is really good, and really good news on that as well is a lot of it now is free. Because Google's trying to effectively compete with Amazon, and they've made more organic free listings part of their shopping listings. So again, make sure your catalogue's there, do everything you can to get those free listings. And then obviously, if you can do that enough, you can solely concentrate on normal ads in terms of actually paying.
Okay, great. I think that's probably all we've got time for. James, thank you so much for the past 45 minutes or so. I think it's safe to say it's been really useful for everyone who's joined us. If you want to join our next Lightbulb session, that's taking place next Thursday, where I will be joined by Kate Methuen-Lay to discuss scaling effectively and the art of letting go. And you can register for that using the link in the comment section. If there's anything that you want to catch up on with today's session, we will be sending out a replay and recording later on today, and you'll find the replay and future sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.heysummit.com or by clicking the link in the comments section below. So yeah, again, thank you for joining us today. And any final words, James, before we leave?
No, a complete pleasure, and just effectively a lot of warm regards and love to you all who are obviously doing a really tough job right now in either trying to grow, keep afloat, whatever that is. And obviously with that in mind, again, if you have any questions that pop up in your head, I wish I'd asked that, do feel free to send that over in one form or another, and I'll be happy to get back to you with a reply. We're all literally in a tough boat now, so pleasure to help you if needed.
Yeah, we popped your LinkedIn in the chat function, James. So I'm sure they'll have a couple of connections and a couple of queries through there. But yeah, that's all we've got time for today. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Thanks, James. Bye.
Right, thank you all for your time, and you, Jonathan, as well.